Data doesn't lie, your go-to for the science behind the art of parenting.
Hi folks, welcome to this week's video. In the next, we're going to do a 3-part mini series. I like doing those on the screening tests that happen in the newborn period before the baby goes home. And these screening tests are 3. Hence the 3-part video, and it's the hearing screen, the newborn screen, which is a blood test, as well as the congenital heart disease screen. So this week, let's talk about the hearing screen. So, a screening test is a test that is relatively inexpensive that you can do with very little discomfort to the patient or the person you're doing it on, that gives you results that are valid and reproducible, and it's supposed to be able to detect the disease before it reaches its critical point, so you can actually intervene and make a difference in the patient's life. So that's why we do screening tests, because we want to be able to detect things before they become critical. Now, the hearing screen we do because babies can have congenital hearing loss, meaning they're born with hearing loss, or they can have hearing loss at any time during their development as they grow up. And it's vital that you hear, because if you do have hearing loss, then you eventually develop limited or delayed ability to grasp language as well as speak with a full vocabulary, and in addition to that, children end up having some social and emotional problems with adapting in school. So all of this is vital, all of this is important, so that's why we're talking about the hearing screen. So let's just dive right in. So it's ideal to do the hearing screen before the baby goes home, but if it's a home birth, we can still do it in the office, and we ideally want to get it done in the first month of life. What hearing screen tests are done? The first one, so let me back up a little bit before I talk about test. What does it look like, hearing? Like, what's our hearing system at its most basic? So we have the outer ear, which is what you see on the outside, which is a part of the ear that's outside the head, and you have the inner ear, middle ear, and then the inner ear. So the outer ear, the part you can't see, is sort of the canal that gets you to the eardrum, and the eardrum vibrates when it hears sound and then transmits this sound that it hears, the vibration of the eardrum, to the middle ear. Now the middle ear, again, is just bones, and the middle ear is not fully developed in a newborn, so it just translates or transmits the vibration it's sensing across to the inner ear. What is the inner ear? The inner ear is actually mature or fully developed at the time at which the baby is born, and it consists of sort of a circular tube called the cochlear, in which you have fluid, and then you have nerve cells that just sort of pick up the vibration of what was transmitted to it, and then translates this vibration into impulses, electrical impulses that it sends along the nerve, and sends these impulses to the brain. So that's the hearing system at its most basic. So when we're testing along the system to see if we can detect hearing. There are 3 types of hearing. There is the conductive, meaning are you transmitting the sound you hear from the eardrum to the bones to the inner ear. And then there is sensorineural hearing loss, meaning are the cells in the inner ear picking up that what they received as a transmission, able to translate it into an impulse, and able to transmit it on that nerve all the way to the brain. So those are the types of hearing loss you have. You have either the conductive, the sensorineural, or you have a mixed type of hearing loss, and that's what we want to detect. So the tests we do, the most frequent one that is done in the newborn period is called the acoustic brainstem reflex, where you put electrodes on the baby's brain, and then the goal of those electrodes, well, not brain, on the scalp, because you're essentially trying to pick up the impulses from the brain, and you put earphones in the baby's ears, a sound is transmitted, and we wait to see if we actually receive those impulses through the electrodes, and that just tells us that screening in its easiest, that there is no hearing loss. There's another type that can be done, which is also called the acoustic emission test, and this one is more picking up an echo. So again, earphones are put in the baby's ears, a sound is transmitted, and we try to detect if we can hear that echo, and if we can detect the echo, then we know that the system is working all the way up into the inner ear. So those are the simple, easy screening tests we do in the newborn period. If a baby fails the screening test, doesn't mean that there is true hearing loss, because we want the test to be extremely sensitive to pick up as many as we can, and then we do a more detailed hearing exam once we fail the first hearing screen with an audiologist. And at that level, then they can do it's called, I think it's a visual stimulated or visual reward type auditory test, where they'll still do that ABR or acoustic, the ABR and then the otoacoustic emission, and then in addition to that do a test where they're looking for they'll positively reward a baby for seeing him or her respond to a sound that was heard. So I don't know, they put earphones in the ear, make a sound, and if the baby turns toward that or sucks or smiles when the sound is heard, then they reward the baby with a flashing toy, for example. So it's a bit more it's more likely to detect if there's hearing loss or not. So anyway, those are the tests we do in the newborn period, and even moving past the newborn period, and that is the reason why we do screening tests. So let me know if you have questions, share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week for the next screening test.